So I'm here with Ed Fennell. Not only is he the owner of the glass shop, he's also my father-in-law. So I got into glass from him because he wouldn't let me not do it. So he convinced me to try it, and I've been stuck ever since now working with it. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you got into glass and kind of how it led up to this.
Well, I first saw glass. I was a senior in college at Iowa State University, and I watched for about 6 hours. I waited for about 6 hours to see about maybe 15, 20 minutes worth of glass blowing, in which they dropped the first piece, and I had to wait 2 or 3 hours for them to do another demo. So consequently, when I started blowing at Renaissance fairs and stuff, I decided that I would blow quite continuously to not keep people waiting as long as I had to wait to see the second attempt. And so it was kind of interesting, and took me a couple of years after college to settle down enough to actually start building and working towards having my own shop, which was in my garage for 20-some years.
How did you convince Rose, your wife, to let you do glass blowing in your garage?
Well, I think she realized I was pretty determined, and she was very supportive to the point that she does the bookkeeping, and I put her through a little bit of difficulty, which very few ladies would continue. I'd probably be divorced if I was with a more hoity-toity person. But Rose has been super supportive over the years. And, so it's worked out.
Can I see your mic real quick? Okay. So we're talking about you starting your glass shop in your garage. How did it go from, because you started there and started teaching yourself the glass blowing?
Well, yes, I was essentially learning to blow glass, and I made a lot of mistakes, and I just saved the mistakes in barrels, and then later used the mistakes into creating sheet glass on that table right there. And we wound up making a machine, and Rosie would crank the machine and roll out the sheet glass. So that sheet glass was made from all the mistakes that I had as I was trying to learn. And of course, friends and my mother got most of my early pieces, and they were given away. And then we had a pizza party with people that I worked with. They wanted to see how I did this. And so I was demonstrating in the garage. We had a pizza party, and everybody brought stuff for the pizza and made their own pizza. So we had mozzarella cheese and beer left over for the next 6 months. So we had to make more pizza. But that made me realize everybody wanted to buy things. And that made me realize that I ought to do it for real. In other words, I had to after that pizza party, I realized this vase that I had made had seven different people name on it. They wanted something like it, so that meant I had to continue to work. And then over the years, that was a pizza party that we had, because one of the guys I worked with worked at a pizza shop in New Jersey when he was going to college. And he said, so he would come and help Rose make pizza. So that started our open house, which was the first Saturday and Sunday of December. It was first just a Saturday, and then when I moved out of the house, it became Saturday and Sunday. And so over the years, it's gradually expanded, and when we moved to the hot shops and created the hot shop, when we opened it, they wanted only a one-day deal, and they said, why do that?
So why did you find glass so, like, as your art form, I guess, is glass? You know, I mean, you did a lot of stuff. You did blacksmithing, and you did sheet glass, and did a lot of stuff, and I think even weaving. Why did glass attract you so much?
Well, the blacksmithing came out of the fact that I was interested in that, and therefore Crystal Forge is the name of the company, because it said glass and it also said ironwood. So I decided when Rose and I came up with the name Crystal Forge, I was collecting blacksmithing equipment as well, and then I coordinated with Ron Loken out of Lincoln, Nebraska, and that's the reason we wound up starting the hot shops here in Omaha. Was we were working with architects from Omaha and doing stuff all over the country, and glass and ironwood. So it made sense to develop a place that we could have both and work in collaboration. And that meant I began collaborating with more people over the years. In fact, Rebecca helped me do a project that went into her college fund, doing some blacksmithing, and then things worked out that we wound up finding this building, which was way too big for what we needed, so we decided to open it as an art center.
Yeah. When did you decide to start teaching glass to others?
Teaching was sort of forced on me by a fella who was fascinated because he saw Ray Schultz, who was a professor at Kearney on ETV, Nebraska Educational TV, and he wanted to learn about this glassblower. So he met Ray, and Ray was closing his furnaces down for the summer, and gave him my name and my phone number because he said you'd be closer. You know, because he lived just west of Lincoln, Nebraska, and I was running all the time, every day, all year long. So Paul forced me into teaching it. Not really forced me. When I met him, he walked up
Just leave it in there for now.
with his hand behind his back and a Michelob beer bottle 6-pack in hand, said, I was told you could use Michelob beer bottles. I said, well, yeah, I can. So I reached for him and he said, well, since you like Michelob, I brought a full one. We can empty it tonight. So I said, a guy after my own heart. So
Okay.
Paul Dean just forced me into becoming a teacher. And it's been quite delightful. And
Now, what is it like? Because I mean, I don't know if there was anyone else around the area that was teaching glassblowing from then, or for like even now. I'm not sure if there's many glassblowing teachers in this area. But what is it like to see some of the students you taught move on? Like to see what Matt Schrader has gone and Tyler Berry where he is now. How does that make you feel?
I'm delighted because Matthew is a much better glassblower than I am, and Tyler Berry was young enough that, but he had started when he was 7 here at my other shop, and he has gone on, but he had applied to go to Corning for a workshop, and when he was talking to him about finding a place to rent while he was in Corning, New York, the lady, the director, was talking to him and said, Tyler, he had kind of a young kid squeaky voice. And she goes, Tyler, how old are you? And he said, well, I'm 13. And she goes, oh my God. Because they had a policy, nobody younger than 18 could work in their shop. So what happened was I sent Matthew with Tyler. So that got Matthew familiar with Corning, as well as he wound up being his sort of, what do they call it?
Assistant? The gaffer?
He wound up being, he took the workshop. I said, well, I'll pay for you to take the workshop, but I'll pay you to go there. And so as it turned out, he said, well, I can take part of it. I said, well, but you're going to help Tyler, so be his guardian while he's there. And so they got to know both those guys as a team, and they thought, wow, they were, and Matthew had taken my workshop, a 3-day workshop, and then came back in, rented time in the studio, and it was kind of interesting because then he went the next season or season after, he went and worked at Corning for a season. And then when he came back, I asked him, are you going to go back to Corning to work? And he goes, no, I'd rather work here and do my own thing, because Corning only allowed you to do what they wanted you to do. And so he said, no, I'd rather work here and just develop on my own. Cool.
When you look at, like, the Hot Shops has been here for 20 years, and Crystal Forge has been part of that Hot Shops for 20 years. And this, the Hot Shops switched over to a nonprofit, and to help with, and it's always been here to help with the arts and support the arts in the community. But why do you think, for you personally, or for the Hot Shops, why do you think it's important to support and show art to the community and show how it's made as well?
Well, when I was working by myself and just learning to blow glass, I would always tell people that came in the shop that had learned in college or whatever, I said, well, you know, I have my own way of doing things because I'm ignorant as far as how glassblowing works. I'm learning. And so I have my own way of doing things sometimes, and it's kind of backwards, you know. So, but it works. It works for me. So it made me realize as a teacher, you can't be firm about how something is done. You just have to be encouraging about the process, because everybody learns in different manner. And so just be encouraging. And one of my favorite songs was Home on the Range, because I had a phrase in there that said, where never is heard a discouraging word. So to me, it's important to be encouraging and just throw up the cautions when you see them about to go over the cliff. Hey, let's not do that. So it's kind of fun, and having some of the best students is really great over here.
You know, when I look at art, and I attempt to do things someone else has done to see how it's done or see if I can do it. Do you have any? I don't want to get too opinionated, but I always hear people in the glass world say, "This guy's stealing my stuff. This guy's doing the same thing as me." I kind of sort of see that as part of the learning process, that you're trying to mimic someone to learn it. And doing it for so many years, like I know you've seen that happen around. How does actually how does that help people grow? What do you have to say to people that think that their stuff is being stolen, or like the art world, that things being mimicked all over?
Yeah. So he's stealing my colors. He's stealing this. He's stealing that. I've heard that from people, and I look at them kind of quizzically, because no one was the first one to do anything. Everything happens because I show you and you say, that's cool, but I think I can do it better. So it's based on not really a one-upsmanship, but that's kind of what happens. You see somebody working and you go, hey, that's cool, and it triggers something in you to say, I want to try this, and you realize it's not easy. So you find ways of doing things to get where you're going. And so it becomes a very, very personal. And what I encourage students to do is, when I teach, I tend to teach to make a drinking glass, something that's useful to you, useful to other people. And you can ask 10 glass blowers to make a drinking glass, and you get 10 different drinking glasses. To me, that's exciting. You don't see the exact same thing. And if Matthew does one, and Chris does one, and Frank does one, and you do one, I can usually pick them up and go, oh, this is Matthew's. Just by knowing how he works. And this is Chris's, this is Frank's, this is Dan's, and so when there's a question in the shop as to who did what, people say, well, where's your work? And I said, well, you don't want to really look at my work. You want to look at the work of the students. That's so much better.
I always looked at, because I hear that all the time. I hear people say that all the time. It's like, oh, they're doing the same thing I did, or it's the same, the same work I do. They're just stealing my work. But when I came here and you were teaching me to blow glass, you would make a glass a certain way, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to make that because that's your style. You're like, I don't care, make it. Just if you're going to do it, make it better. You know, do it better.
Just my way of it's what's better, what's appropriate. Do you want a mug that you can slam down on the table, or do you want one that you have to be careful with? They're all appropriate. So, what's appropriate? If you're going to make it to go out camping in the rough, you're going to make it different than you have for your dining room table. That's appropriate. Appropriate is the how well it works for the given thing that you're trying to do. It doesn't mean it has to be it's worse or better or whatever. It just you decide what it's for and make it accordingly.
Yeah. I always find it amazing when you make something and it doesn't turn out. You know, we've talked about this before, where the one that doesn't turn out or doesn't do what you want, that the person's going to want, or the one that's going to sell first. I just always find it amazing how the people who come in will pick things out that they like, and you might not like it, you know, but it's all in the eye of the beholder when it comes to glass.
Yeah, and really, you don't know what to use it for. When I first started blowing glass, I hoped that I would eventually get good enough that I could make a glass that would sit on my nightstand and hold my false teeth. You know, so you work towards that.
Are you close yet?
Not yet.
No.
But, you know, you have to look at things with a bit of humor and what inspires people oftentimes to buy something is because they've never seen one quite like that for some reason. So it's really fun to see a variety of ideas to the same end. What's it going to be used for? And that doesn't mean you have to do utilitarian stuff. It's all useful. It's useful to say something to you. It speaks to me. That's why people buy stuff sometimes. And sometimes they buy it because they have a friend that would love it.
So someone made a comment here, and I've heard you say this before, I think, or at least I heard Tim say this before, about how the material will record your energy. You know, so when you're working with glass and how when you work with it and what you're doing, how much you love it, how much you love the process, that I feel like that gets recorded and shown in your pieces.
Yeah, and the way, you know, like we were talking earlier, that I encourage people to try it. And if you very quickly, when you learn to make, say, a drinking glass, if you can make a drinking glass, you go through the whole process of what it takes to make a vase, you know, different things like that. So by the same token, just try it. If that doesn't work for you, try what it turns into. You know, use what happens. If you accidentally bump something that falls on the floor, you go, oh well, I'll make another one. Or the next person will say, I'll try and pick that one up and fix it. So I said, you know, it's all valid to get where you're going. You know, it's fun. Just
it's always the one that the perfect one I was making that falls on the floor usually. So it's
yeah,
and
it's kind of like fishing. The best ones get away.
So what do you see in the future with the hot shops turning to a nonprofit? Is that going to change anything for Crystal Forge, or what do you see for the future of Crystal Forge?
The way I think about that is It will mean that the Crystal Forge will be in good hands as it goes, as people will continue to work, and hopefully more of the general public will somehow get involved, whether it's donating to make it continue to go, buying stuff. It continues. That's the only way it continues to go. I've been to a lot of places where they have furnaces and they spend millions of dollars to build this facility. Everything in this facility comes out of that furnace. That's the only way it can continue to work. Is if you build a furnace and the furnace lives for a few years, it's part of the continuity of continually working and learning to make the equipment as well as make cool stuff out of that equipment.
Yeah.
So,
and that furnace has been running for about 8 years or something, hasn't it?
That's been, it's 8 years. I think this year is 8th year. So where it sits, there's been other furnaces, but there'll be one probably next year I'll make. So I figure the life of a furnace is somewhere between 5 and 10 years if it's used a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think I don't have any other questions unless you have anything else you want to add.
Well, I just want to encourage people to come to the open house, even if it's virtual, and you see it online, and enjoy the hot shops. There's a lot of talent in this place. It always amazes me every day when I walk through the place, and I don't go through the place every day. It's like I come here, and sometimes I get as far as the dock for emptying the trash or whatever. Don't get much further than that. So it's a fun place, and I thank everyone for support over the years, and hopefully we get support from more people as we go.
Can always use a little more support. All right. Well, thanks, Ed.
Yeah, take care.